Is this recording? Ooh. Yep, I'm doing another one. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, a few months ago, actually, I think about 2 months ago now, I did a video where I ranked all of the chapters from the original Half-Life. And since I found it a lot of fun to make that video, I'm going to do it again, but now for Half-Life 2. So how this is going to work is going to be fairly simple. I'm going to rank all 13 of Half-Life 2's chapters from S tier all the way down to D tier. S tier being the highest tier possible and D tier being the poopy one. Now before we get started, it is of course worth mentioning that this is my opinion and you're of course allowed to disagree with me. It's only natural that our tastes aren't going to line up exactly, so if you find yourself having a different opinion about a chapter in Half-Life 2, then feel free to post your opinion in the comments. Let's have a discussion! Oh, and while you're down there, let me know if I should turn this into a series, because there are more Half-Life games out there and a whole lot more chapters to rank. My work is not done. Alright, without further ado, let's get started.
LambdaGeneration.
First off, we have point insertion, you know, the first chapter of the entire game. Honestly, I think it's a great setup for Half-Life 2. I mean, of course, you have the iconic G-Man speech at the beginning. You have, you know, the whole train station to explore. Well, not the whole train station, but a large chunk of it at least. And the plaza and the apartment blocks. You immediately just get this, like, vibe that something is just off about this universe now. And that, you know, things aren't good. It sets up the Combine pretty well and what kind of a menace they are, and that it's probably not a good thing that humanity is enslaved by them. So I'm going to put this chapter in the A tier. A lot of narrative stuff happens, but not a lot of action. So, yeah. It's A tier. Haha. Next up is a Red Letter Day, and this chapter, oh boy, is still full of exposition. We're in Kleiner's lab, get the suit, teleport away. We have that whole section in the train yard where we have to run away from Combine soldiers. I'm going to put it in the B tier. Look, there is still a lot of good exposition in this chapter, and honestly, it's not really that bad or anything. It's just that it's still a lot of standing around, and honestly, maybe these two chapters could have been, like, merged into one chapter at some point, because they both kind of serve a similar-ish purpose. Yeah, I'm just gonna put it in B tier. Let's get into the action. Root Canal. The first chapter of the game where actual gameplay happens, right? Not just exposition, there's some of it, but not a whole lot. The game really got started now, if you know what I mean. It's got good puzzles, good combat, good progression when it comes to guns. I find myself always enjoying playing this chapter, so I'm going to put it in S tier. Yes, I think Root Canal is S tier. If you disagree with me, that's fine, but I think it's S tier. So now we're at Water Hazard, you know, the chapter with the boat. Okay, hear me out. I'm going to put it in C tier, and here's why. I think it's overall a pretty good chapter. It has its moments, it has some pretty good key locations, but I'm just kind of the opinion that the chapter kind of just overstays its welcome a little bit. And yes, the final boss with the helicopter, which drops all the bombs in the lake, it's pretty alright. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like at a certain point, I just want to move on. I just don't want to be in this boat anymore. So yeah, that's what I wrote down in my notes here. Water Hazard, it's pretty fun. It has its moments, but it overstays its welcome. And I guess that's as snappy as I need to be with this. So that is why it is C tier. So now we get to Black Mesa East, and oh boy, D tier. Oh, you think Black Mesa East is D tier? For me, it's S tier, man. It's an S tier chapter. It's not D tier. There is almost nothing that happens in this chapter except for, like, story exposition. And don't get me wrong, when you're playing through the game the first few times, it's not really that much of a problem. And you do get the gravity gun, and you do get to play around with that a little bit. I'm really ranking this from my perspective. And when I play Half-Life 2 again, I always dread the moment that I enter Black Mesa East, because I don't care anymore. I heard this exposition so many times. There's really not much else that happens. It's a very short chapter as well. Well, it doesn't feel very short with all this exposition going on, but if I'm playing through the game, or if you're playing through the game for the first time, you might rank this chapter entirely differently. But since I've been playing through it for so many times, this is just kind of a chapter where everything slows down to a crawl, and I'm just gonna have to stand there and let the scripted sequences play out until you get to the gravity gun section, which is finally where you get to actually do some things. So after this ridiculous slowdown in the gameplay, we don't go to Ravenholm. It's really good. I seriously love We Don't Go to Ravenholm. It is so good. The atmosphere, the traps, you know, the physics sandbox in general that the gravity gun now enables you to really make use of. It's great. I love how the town's layout is actually very recognizable and you come back to certain pieces of the town over time. I love this sort of thing. So for me, this is S tier. I'm sorry if you disagree, but for me, it is S tier. It's amazing. I don't know if you guys have played Half-Life 2 Update, but Half-Life 2 Update enhances the visuals for Ravenholm even more. It's the definitive version of Ravenholm to me. So if you haven't played Half-Life 2 Update yet, go check it out. So after Ravenholm comes, say it with me now, Odessa Cubby. Highway 17 is a chapter that I like. I think the driving mechanics in Half-Life 2 are a little bit wonky. I think we can all kind of agree that the buggy isn't the best controlling vehicle in any FPS game ever made. But I think its set pieces kind of make up for it, especially the bridge level. I mean, the bridge level is freaking iconic, man. It's an absolute, I wouldn't say necessarily masterpiece, but it's pretty darn good, and it comes pretty darn close to it, in my opinion. It's one of the best set pieces in the game, and it is in this chapter. What else do we have? Couple of houses, a lighthouse at the end. Of course, Odessa Cubbage that I mentioned before. I honestly would love to have a pasta with him at some point in time. Absolutely. Maybe it does overstay its welcome a little bit, but I feel like it's not as bad as Water Hazard. So I'm actually going to put this in, oh wow, A tier, Sandtraps. Anyone remember that chapter? I'm just kidding. Sandtraps is the chapter where you have to watch out for the sand. You can't stand on it because then the antlions will try to eat your brains out. Yummy, yummy. For them. For you, it's more like owie, owie. I have a feeling that every single time I play this chapter, it just gets on my nerves more and more and more. The first few times you play through it, it's probably fine though. It's probably not as grating, but over time, it starts to become just more of an annoyance. To me, personally. Yeah, it's very personal. Very personal! This one has to go into the C tier. I'm not a fan. You get the bug baits, though, so that's fun. And then, like, a tutorial afterwards that you can't skip. Good for beginning players, but bad for people who have played it 200 times already. It's an over-exaggeration, but you know what I mean. Luckily, after Sandtraps comes Nova Prospekt. Probably everyone's favorite chapter in Half-Life 2. The theming is great, it got some great combat sections, and you even get the antlions to help you out. The Combine is completely and utterly screwed. I seriously do love this chapter, and I do find myself mostly enjoying playing through it. You do also notice that the combat is actually becoming a little bit harder in this chapter. You definitely feel like you infiltrated some kind of Combine stronghold. This is definitely an A tier chapter. It doesn't wow me enough for it to become an S tier chapter, but it certainly is up there as one of my favorite chapters to replay if I get some time. But unfortunately, its stinky next door neighbor of a chapter isn't as nice. Man, oh man, Entanglement. This chapter is a whole lot more narratively driven, meaning that we get a whole lot more story exposition here. This isn't really the problem though. I do like to be kept in touch with what's happening with the story while I wreck the Combine's party. It's the gameplay in this chapter that bothers me. Because you get not one, not two, but 3 turret defense sections in this chapter. 3! One somewhere near the beginning of the chapter, another one somewhere deeper in the prison, and the last one right in front of your escape teleporter. Now, the first one and the last one aren't really as bad, but the second one is absolute ass. needing you to stay in position for a while you have to defend yourself from combined soldiers coming from 4 different sides. And you only have 3 turrets to defend yourself with, leaving 1 opening for yourself to supervise. And those turrets can also not always be trusted because the combine will just knock them over on occasion. It's terrible and I hate this. I never look forward to replaying this chapter. I'm putting this one in the C tier. There you go. Screw Entanglement. Anticitizen 1 were officially teleported back into City 17, and oh look, it's completely ravaged. Dr. Kleiner has a gun. Anyway, great combat sections, great atmosphere. Actually, legitimately, you actually go back to some of the areas you've been to in Chapter 1. I just really love that. I love going back to previously visited areas and seeing them completely changed over the course of the game's story. It's a really nice touch. And I wish more games did that. I really do. So I'm gonna put this in A tier. I genuinely think that this is a really, really good chapter. And it leads directly into Follow Freeman, which I'm also gonna give an A tier. Yay! We're in the A tier zone in the game. I really like the final chapters in Half-Life 2. I think they're solidly designed. I think the combat is pretty darn good. It's got some pretty good set pieces as well. Wait, of course, the bank. Or it used to be a bank, I think. Easily one of the most recognizable set pieces in Half-Life 2 as well. The Overwatch Nexus, as it's called in game. For the most part, I really enjoy playing through this chapter. These 2 chapters kind of melt away my brain as kind of one chapter because it all kind of feels similar, looks the same-ish. So for me, it also has the A tier ranking because it just continues what Anticitizen 1 did really well and builds on top of that. Are benefactors. It's a power trip level. You're at the end of the game. This will be kind of like one of the last gameplay sections that you'll be doing. So Valve thought, let's give the player a power trip. So they give you an enhanced gravity gun, and now you can pick up combined soldiers and toss them around, or, you know, send objects flying their way. It's pretty darn good, but it's broken up by these boring on-a-rail sections. They look highly impressive. I actually really do love that last one. The first one was all right, but that last one, you know, where you get a look over the entire city, that one is just, it's just really nice. But I do find myself getting bored in these sections now because I've already seen it a ton of times. So I'm going to have to give it a C tier, of course. Just kidding, it's an A tier, come on. Dark Energy, the final chapter of the game, if you're not counting the credits. It is your confrontation with Dr. Breen, and it's the boss fight with Dr. Breen, pretty much. And it's a little bit anticlimactic, I'm gonna have to admit. Even when I played it for the first time, it was not really super exciting. It just kind of seemed more of what we've gotten in the previous chapter, but then a little bit tighter, a little bit more dangerous with more combined soldiers trying to end you. That's kind of it. You have to throw these energy balls into the portal to make sure that gets destroyed and kills Dr. Breen with it. And you never even get to really shoot him in the face, which is pretty upsetting, to be honest with you. Especially once you've seen what we had with the original Half-Life, you know, killing the Nihilanth. That was a whole lot more exciting, in my opinion, because that was an actual creature you were dealing direct damage to, and it was trying to deal direct damage to you as well. So that one-on-one engagement was a lot more interesting than what we have here for this boss battle. I'm gonna have to give it a B tier. I'm sorry. I mean, it's an iconic... I wouldn't really call it an ending, because, well, Valve never really meant for this to be an ending, because we got episodes 1, episode 2. Anyway, B tier boss battle. Could have been better, could have been a lot more interesting, but I get what Valve was kind of doing. They already had the episodic model planned at this point, I think, so they were kind of just leaving things on a cliffhanger on purpose so that they can kickstart the next game and grab your attention for that one so that you'll definitely buy that one too. Whew, and that was it. Those were all the Half-Life 2 chapters ranked. I hope you liked this video. I definitely really enjoyed making it, talking about easily one of my favorite Half-Life games. And if you didn't agree with some of these entries, then that's fine. You can leave your thoughts in the comments below. Be nice, though. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, I would say. So keep that in mind when you comment. So yeah, that's it pretty much for me. I haven't really written a specific outro for this video, so I'm just going to say, don't forget to subscribe and to ring that bell icon so you'll never miss another video on this YouTube channel. Salutations, and take care.